Thank you all for joining us. We're getting a little rusty at in-person meetings, so we're getting everything sorted back out again. We do have some folks that are joining us on Zoom. We should be able to hear them over the audio, to be able to answer questions and things like that. I'll also be monitoring the chat and sharing the information. For the folks on Zoom, we don't have the room mic'd, so Matt's going to do his best job to repeat questions. But if you need clarification on anything, please just let us know in the chat. Quick note, they are asking us to wear masks if we're in public spaces, but you're fine if you're in the room. So if you do head out in the hallway or down to the restroom, wear a mask. We do have a vaccination clinic that's happening in the building today. If you haven't found the restrooms, those are at the end of this hallway on your right. But we'll go ahead and turn it over to Matt. Quick introduction. Matt is the director of the Learning Factory at Virginia Tech, which falls under the Department of Industrial and Systems Engineering. And as the director of the Center of High Performance Manufacturing, Matt manages client outreach activities, including coordinating consulting projects with ISE faculty, recruiting external projects for the senior design program, and managing workforce development and continuing professional education engagement. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay. Works. Okay, how's the sound? Okay, all right. Yeah, so I will also open up with a opening apologies. You know, I haven't talked to people in about a year and a half. So thanks for having me here. This is a pleasure. I've been down here to the IDA conversations before a couple of times, and I think some of those were fruitful. So again, my name is Matt Ernest. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Industrial and Systems Engineering Department and the Center for High Performance Manufacturing. But I'll spend most of my time, because I think it's more meaningful to you all, to talk about senior design and the Learning Factory. So Learning Factory is a new entity within the ISE department, and it's pretty cool. At any time, if anybody has any questions, just feel free to jump right in. John, what is my time limit? 3 hours?
We're shooting to be done maybe around 9:30.
Okay.
But then we need to hang around for questions or whatever. You guys help direct okay? If you need to leave,
Yeah, if I go 30 minutes, I'll be surprised. So maybe 20. So, okay, let's get this working. There we go. Okay, so real quickly about the ISE Department, Industrial and Systems Engineering. Our major, and forgive me for in here because I'm looking up here. Usually there's something in front of me that I can cheat on, but here I'm going to be walking around a little bit and looking at the screen as you are. So the ISE department, we have basically 4 areas of study focus for our students, of which we usually have in the neighborhood of 600 to 800 students every year. So the way Virginia Tech is constructed, if you're going to major in engineering, you don't declare your major until your 2nd year. So you don't become an IE until you're a sophomore. Therefore, we only count the sophomore, the junior, and the senior class in our kind of head count totals. But we usually have 600 to 800 students in the program, and they're divided in between manufacturing, human factors or economics, management systems, and operations research. Those are the basic areas of study. What else can I tell you? From a faculty standpoint, the ISE department, we have about 60 faculty and staff, and I'm a research faculty member. I'm a research faculty member and have been in the department now for about 10 years. Recently, we were voted number 4 by the U.S. News and World Report. That's not voted. That's a nationwide estimation of the value of the product, right? So how good are our students? Some of you have hired many of our students, and we're number 4 in the country, behind only Georgia Tech, Penn State, and Michigan. So we're in pretty good company. Within the ISE department, we have what's called the Center for High Performance Manufacturing. I'm the director of that center. The center is made, we have 8 or 10, depending on the time of year, faculty members who focus on manufacturing. Everything from hardcore traditional manufacturing to cybersecurity and the data side of manufacturing. Addition of the CHPM, is to discover new and innovative ways to help manufacturers with their operational challenges. And we do that via these 3 ways. First, faculty consulting and research projects. Our faculty are allowed and encouraged to work with you all in your areas, either as a paid consultant or as a faculty member in a research project. So that is a way that you can engage and get some of the help from Blacksburg that you may need. We also do senior design projects. This is where our ISE seniors have to do a capstone project, which is an academic year long. And we prefer in ISE that they do a project at your site as opposed to some of the other engineering disciplines, of which there are 13 or 14 at Virginia Tech, prefer to have the project being done in Blacksburg. We don't prefer that. You know, we're industrial engineers, so we want them to be in industry. The projects are probably going to be the bulk of what I talk about today. So I'll give you more on detail on that in just a minute. And the last thing that we do through the CHPM is we'll help educate your employees. I was a VP at a community college in West Virginia for 5 years before I came to Virginia Tech. And I am a big believer in the community college system. I'm actually a product of the community college system. And there are certain things that community colleges, actually there are a lot of things that community colleges do better in Virginia Tech. Some of those are more because they're more responsive and more agile. But there are also things that we at Tech can do that can help you in addition to Whitfield Community College and others. So when it comes to things like robotics design or interdisciplinary projects that are kind of system-wide, that's where our faculty may be able to do some training for your employees. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that with the learning faculty. So that's the Center for High Performance Manufacturing and Industrial and Systems Engineering Department. Do anybody have any questions about those? I don't think anything there is earth-shattering, but I don't want to move past if you have questions. Okay, all right. So the sand design program, the quick facts about the program are our students actually take 2 classes, ISE 4005 and 4006. And the class itself is called Project Management and Systems Design. You as an employer or a sponsor of one of those projects really don't care about that. But so anyway, it's an academic year program. Capstone, it's the Capstone course that culminates the 4-year degree. And like I said before, it is a real world project. Not all of them are. Some, about 10% of the projects are research based, but 90% of our projects are real world. So they are assigned by you and the students help you solve a problem. Projects require some form of system design or improvement, and most of the organizations external to Virginia Tech. The way the process goes is I kind of canvas and try and find projects that are suitable for our students that are meaningful to you. And the first day of class, I'll talk through all of the potential projects with the students, and we usually have 200 seniors every year. How's this? Much better. Awesome. Okay. So welcome back from the commercial interruption. Thank you for your help. Go on. So the way where was I? How do students get their projects? So on the first day of class, the students come in and I go through the slate of project, which is usually in the range of 50 or 60 projects for 200 students. And they give us their list of top 10 selection. And then we, by the time Labor Day rolls around, we will have assigned 4 students to teams, and then they'll, from your perspective, they would come see you by around Labor Day and start talking about the problem. So that's the way it works at Virginia Tech, at least in ISE. We stress impact. We ask them to quantify it. Some of our projects can quantify it because they're either for research purposes or maybe for small nonprofits where the effort put in is hard to measure in the output, but most of them are. I'll talk about some output in the future. Of course, let's talk about a teaching team, and you can see there are about 6 or 7 of us, including a full-time instructor. Dr. Chewbacca teaches the class. I do the outreach. Sam Rosher helps with the graphic design and messaging, so she helps the students with their final presentation and that sort of thing. And we have 2 GTAs usually. We also have faculty members and subject matter experts from industry who we call technical advisors. So the teams have a lot of guidance, and it's a long year. You can see the kind of graphic at the right shows you the relative distribution of the types of projects. Roughly a third are in lean value stream mapping process improvement. Another third is data science-based or warehousing, material handling, that kind of thing. And then the others, anything that you can think of under the human factors, operations research, those types of things. Projects are pretty much all over the board. This is some data from last year. You can see again the kind of distribution of the sectors of projects that we have. So some of those overlap because we have typical, there are some healthcare producers like Baxter Healthcare. They're not a healthcare provider, but they manufacture IV bags and things like that. So they might spread over a couple of those industry sectors, but you can see that many sectors are represented. Last year we had 47 projects, and this is not this past year, which we just graduated because I don't have that data yet. I can talk generalities, but last year, 47 projects, of which 37 quantified their impact, and the median quantified impact was $262,000 on the average per team. Okay, so and that was client approved. We actually have a 3-phase process. When the students are working on their project, we ask them to fill out an impact form, and that first layer is the student's estimate of the impact of the project that they did. Okay, so oftentimes that's lower than that number. Then we ask them to make sure that the client looks at it and signs it, so that the client, at least have it pass the straight face test. It may not be totally accurate to the dime, but they're generally correct. But then the summer after, or within, I think it's within 6 months, Gen Edge, who's a manufacturing extension partnership for Virginia, follows up with the client and double checks those impacts. So how, Sonic America, this project was instituted, what kind of savings did you actually see? So that number, the client approved number, was 262,000, the median. The reason why I quote the median is because the mean is much higher than that. A lot of times we have a few projects that are nationwide that save companies in the multi-millions, and that kicks the mean up to about $1.5 million. And I don't want to tell you all that our teams are going to save you $1.5 million. The median is 262, at least for last year. For this recent year that we just graduated yesterday, I just calculated the numbers yesterday, and the median was 212. So it's still pretty good ROI. This year, by the numbers, we had 200 students, we had 50 project teams, and 35 sponsoring organizations and 38 advisors. So you can see that some organizations have multiple teams, as did some advisors. They had to advise multiple teams. Again, the faculty advisors are sometimes our faculty and sometimes subject matter experts from industry. So we now call them technical advisors. Geographically, this year, the projects were spread across 11 states. And we had one with Baxter Healthcare in the UK. This year we were a little bit stranglehold by COVID, as I know all you were. Our students couldn't travel. They usually travel to the bulk of our states. So the ones that are border, whether it's Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, all down to North Carolina, we ask that the students travel make multiple trips. But for the UK, or we've got clients in Southern California, things like that, sometimes travel is not necessary. And in those cases, most of the projects are more data driven. So it's data analysis, maybe supply chain, things like that, or finance. We've got a company in Texas that every year contracts with us to do some type of financial data gathering, and the students love those projects too. These are the sponsors of this year's programs. You can see that some of them are local, some of them are national. Everything, public, private, service, manufacturing, finance. But it's the nice thing about having this level of sponsorship is our students have, when you have 200 students, they have many varying interests. Some of them have minors in computer science, green engineering, finance, you name it. So having a broad spectrum of products appeals to all of our different students. this is kind of the rough layout of the year. So in September and October, they're working on, so all the way through the year, they're working on building their final slide deck, what they will present in April, their final presentation. And we spend September and October mainly focusing on presentation skills, and they're working on their basically first 5 slides in that slide deck. So who is the team? What is the company? Generally, what do they think the problem is? That kind of stuff. And they just get used to being in front of groups. They present to their college classmates. So, and I don't know what you did when you were that age, but talking in front of 200 people is kind of a nerve-shattering thing. So we get them started early. The rest of the winter semester is gathering data at the site about the project, about the problem. First and foremost, adequately stating what the problem is, and then gathering data on what they're going to do, what they really think the problem is, and then by the time they're heading out for the winter break, they're already planning for what they're going to do in the spring semester. So in ISO ISE 4005, they get a grade for the fall semester based on their prep work. ISE 4006 in the spring, they get a grade based on their delivery. So if you look at February and through May, February and March is a lot of data selection and then implementing their best solution from up to 5 or 6 alternate solutions. And then they measure impact, and then April and May is wrapping it up. So final presentation, a final report, and a senior symposium, and then graduation was just last week. So the symposium is an interesting, relatively unique thing. All the students, all clients, past, present, and future are invited. Moms and dads are invited. It's usually, when it's live, it's at the end of Virginia Tech, and it's a full house. We take over the whole inn, so that we usually have about 400 people at that event. And anybody can come and anybody can watch any of the 50 teams. This year it was all virtual, kind of a drag, but still you can see bouncing from one room to another, you can see a bunch of different mix in all of the different projects. But that is a typical year, spans the whole year. A lot of sports activities also. Questions about senior design? And I'll have open Q&A at the end, but any questions about senior design? Yes.
Be interested in participating in the company?
Good question. So the question was, if you're interested in participating as a company, what's the process? Just give me a call. I'll leave my cards, and John will have my contact information. But the way the process works is that we would have a conversation about what types of projects you are thinking about. I've got some guidance as to what projects are good and what projects are bad for ISEs. So we can talk through scoping the project roughly, right? And usually I like to have those projects in by mid-July or 1st of August because the students start at the end of August. And really, when I talk to the students about what the project slate is for the year, I don't want to over-prescribe much. So the information that you and I would gather, we really just present a broad single paragraph description. It might say, we're looking to improve the throughput on line 1, something broad like that, maybe a little bit more detail. But the purpose of that is to get the students then around Labor Day to come talk to you and ask, okay, show me the problem. And then their job is to ask the right questions from you to figure out what the problem might be and what they're there to solve. Once we have come up with a kind of rough project description, it's a pretty easy intro. We just have a 20-question survey that I would send you. It's actually on our website, and it's just a Google form, and it asks you simple stuff like who the point of contact will be, the main phone number, email, but then a project title, project description. Do you have any constraints in the project? For example, do you require U.S. citizens only? Do you require no cameras on site? Those types of things. And the students then select the first of August, the last of August. Does that help? Yeah, so if anybody wants to engage, just give me a call or send me an email. Other questions? Okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the Learning Factory. It is tied in with senior design and ISE, but mainly senior design. The Learning Factory was launched fall of 2019. our years are running together. The whole learning factory is a realistically equipped production facility. We've got traditional machining and assembly operations, but the focus of it is Industry 4.0. So anything in the realm of Industry 4.0 is what we're talking about, and I'll go into that in just a minute. But the purpose is different than some other labs, quote unquote labs. Here, the purpose is to be used as an educational platform for interdisciplinary undergraduate hands-on learning, and for our partners in Learning Factory to be used as a technology test bed. So if you are considering some new technology, but you don't yet want to make it an investment in something in your plant and had it not work, we might have it in Learning Factory, and we invite you to come look at it, check it out. Or if we don't have it, then let's partner together and get something in there so that you can use it and we can use it going forward. So you could do some test bed activity in our place. The mission of Learning Factory to provide a safe and effective learning environment where hands-on undergraduate education of Industry 4.0 concepts and technologies can be experienced. So the thing there is hands-on undergraduate education. So our students are smart. They get a great education, but most of it outside of the Harris lab in their sophomore year is classroom work. This is a 2,000 square foot facility-ish where they can, if they're interested in robotics, they can go work on a cobot. If they're interested in machining, they can go work on a Haas 5-axis machining center. If they're interested in virtual factories, they can do that too. Literally do that, not just learn about it. More to come, but that's the purpose is for undergraduates and hands-on. The graphic in the right shows you, it's not the scale by any means, but that's kind of the layout. It's about 30 feet by 60 feet, and then it has a second floor mezzanine where the digital twin and the virtual factory are above it. I'll show you more pictures. But you can see we've got robotics and automation. We've got three different robots, flexible assembly station, and this is sometimes called a mechatronics station, and most of the time used to train technicians in how to repair your robots. We use it more for our engineers to understand the systems design behind it. So to us, it's more of a demonstrator and a kind of first step for them to understand how the system works. And then we also have machines, a 5-axis Haas, a Coca lathe, a couple of additive manufacturing printers, and then other virtual factories. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about each one of those. Also, the other thing about Learning Factory is most of the work in there is done as team-based. On the Industry 4.0 technology, I mentioned the flexible assembly system. We also have robotics. We've got 3 robots. One's a UR5 cobot, another's a Albo 5i cobot. But then we also have a Fanuc industrial robot, which was on loan to us from Kennametal. That is leaving and going to be replaced with an Epson robot, industrial robot, in June. And we also have additive manufacturing. Our 3D printers are Rise printers, which are relatively unique in the industry. They are, you can have one in your living room. They print a polymer. They're unique in that they don't, when they're printing that polymer, they don't give off any volatile organic compounds, so the VOCs don't require a vent hood. You can just print something right there on that tabletop. It's about half the size of that table. They also print in color by jetting color onto the molten polymer. So I wish I had brought some samples. It's a pretty unique process in that it prints white and can paint on something on the top. That's the X-Rise. That's the Rise 1. The X-Rise can actually print color through and through. So that's relatively unique. So traditional manufacturing, we have a bunch of teams that are working in there. We have a College of Engineering disassembly team. We have the teams Baja and Formula One. The Baja and Formula One teams are competition teams nationwide, and they use our 5-axis Haas a lot to machine parts for those vehicles. The Connect and Code team, that's kind of a tongue-in-cheek term to an ECE team, electrical and computer engineering team that's working to resurrect an Ecoca lathe from the mid-90s that we had in another lab. We moved it into this one, disconnected it, and asked an interdisciplinary electrical and computer engineering team to bring it back to life. So it's a CNC machine, computer numerical control. And when the team saw the thing, they said, let's call ourselves a CNC team, but connect and code. So they need to connect it up, do the coding to get the CNC working again, computer numerical control, but then they're also networking it to our virtual factory. So that's another interdisciplinary thing. And AMT is the Association for Manufacturing Technology, and they are, we actually have two senior design teams sponsored by AMT, and they're implementing the standard MT Connect for two of our machines, talking to a digital twin. The accompanying systems, we have, I don't know if you noticed it in that graphic before, but we had a team this past year who sized and installed 9 solar panels on the roof of Durham Hall. So we think we can claim that the Learning Factory is the first net zero learning factory in the world. We've researched it and there's nobody else. There will be one at Wichita State in the fall, but we think we are the first. So it's just kind of cool. And that's that ISE team sized and installed with local vendor solar connection, put those on the roof. The other things that we've got accompanying the process on the floor is we have the digital twin. So the data that comes off of the machines, you can see on the second floor, we have 2 65-inch screens. One is a 3-dimensional virtual reality model of the factory. So when you're standing on the mezzanine, looking at the Haas in the corner running, you can look at the 3D virtual reality model and see the Haas and the cutting head in the Haas move back and forth, which is pretty cool, along with a cobot. I think right now we only have one of the robots connected. But then we also have on another 65-inch screen, the digital thread that has all the dashboard related to the metrics that are going on the floor. There's a lot of things happening there. These are the projects. I mentioned that all of our projects in the Learning Factory are team-based. Here are the 10 senior design projects last year that were sponsored by companies and were performed in the Learning Factory. So there was a lot of activity in the year when COVID impacted a lot of projects. We had to limit the capacity of the Learning Factory to only 16 people at a time, but they managed it well, and a lot of very cool projects. So pictures, so you can see this is the overhead view from the mezzanine. So you can see these are the 2 Rise printers. So this is our assembly cell. So these cells were built over 2 years by 2 separate senior design teams with the help of Moog and Radford. They literally designed, the tables, which isn't that big a deal, but then built them. And this year's team designed the training for Lean. So if any of you have ever been to a Lean training where they do a simulation and they put together clocks or Legos or things like that, same deal in here, but the product that we build in here is a Chicago multi-tool. It's one of those little, not that if you imagine, actually this mic is about the same size. So it's one of those tools that vibrates back and forth, but it's easily broken down into about 8 parts. And you can, in a half a day, teach employees about Lean while actually building a product, and it's in that cell. Back here, this is our robot line. This picture is a little bit old in that right here, there's now the flexible assembly station, and that flexible assembly station has a small UR3 robot. The bigger brother, I don't know if you can see it or not, but this is the UR5, Universal Robot 5. This is the Ablo robot, and there's the Fanuc that I was mentioning before. This is the Haas 5-axis machining center, and this is the Akoko bike. We also had a tensile tester here. And there's now, in this space here, there's 2 optical microscopes for characterizing metal at the nano level. Another picture, that's a better shot of the robot line and the Haas. And you can also, let me draw your attention down here. This is a MIR, mobile industrial robot. So that's something that is an industry. So if you guys in your plants were going to install any one of these things, you would install either one of these robots or this MIR. We have another little turtle bot. I don't think it's in the camera, but a turtle bot if you've ever seen battle bots on ESPN, that they use those little turtle bots, and they're mainly, they're toys, but from our perspective, we have one to introduce students to autonomous vehicles. It's small, about the size of a laptop, but they can learn how to program and learn how to design and change things before they go messing with a large Mir 100. It has a capacity, the Mir does, of carrying 100 kilograms. I've got a Mir 200 that'll hold 200 kilograms. I've got LiDAR and obstacle sensing and all that kind of stuff. Very cool. That's a little bit better shot of the two Rise printers. Oh, there's a turtle bot in the box right there. So that's a little bit about senior design and Learning Factory. Now I'll open the floor to any questions. I know I went relatively fast, but a lot of information, so please ask, glad to answer.
Is it possible to, for a project to get approved, that can you schedule that 2 years in advance? Because of course there's going to be capital that's going to be included at the plant level that's going to have to be submitted and approved, especially when you talk about a field or something, there's a lot of money involved there. Is it possible to do that 2 years out rather than a year, or do you base that, you say, no, it's a year on?
Anything's possible. So let me rephrase the question for the folks online. So the question was, is it possible to talk about a senior design project 2 years prior to the student's senior year? The answer is yes, but I'll also put a caveat to that. Many of our projects are capital intensive, but that doesn't mean that the company needs to wait 2 years for that. So what we could do is you mentioned a robot. So let's talk about a robot application. We could have students help you scope the project. So if you say that we're considering a robotic application on line 3, then what you and I can do is talk about a paragraph description, which is challenging the students to design the system for later implementation. No problem there. And they'll come to the site, they'll calculate everything, the size of the robots, the capacity from a throughput standpoint, all that kind of thing. And they can recommend to you what to buy. We actually had a team this year that was working with Bob Gale up in Eagle Rock. And I think they had to deal with like 12 different vendors because it was a robotic application. And they did the homework for you, which is good. It's a good experience for them. And they have to deal with multiple robots, multiple designs, and assess them and make a recommendation. So your project was exactly what Mount Gala did in Eagle Rock. They couldn't implement it yet, right? Because the vendor still had to build a robot and install it, but they'll take that and probably install it in the summer or in fall. And that's okay. From a student standpoint, they learn from dealing with a client, the Mount Gala, and having to deal with multiple vendors and, in an awful situation with a pandemic, but they still produced. So answer is yes, but let's talk, and that's probably applicable for any project. If you think, I always tell people that a good senior design project is something that is important to your business, but not critical for the day-to-day operations. So if you think about, I don't know, the top 20 projects that you've got that are outside of the day-to-day operations, you're probably already addressing as an organization the top 5 or 6, right? The bottom 18 through 20, you don't really care about, but it's that sweet spot around 10 through 15. That's a good thing for a senior design project, whether it's an actual something that they can implement during that academic year, or if it's something where they make recommendations for the company to implement later in the school. Did that help? So the answer is yes, but let's talk. Okay. Other questions? Talk a little bit about the logos. So the companies this year, I think I said we had 35 or 38 companies and 50 projects. That's pretty typical. We usually have 40 to 50 projects and 40 to 50 sponsors every year. It's rare. Locar in Tennessee actually sponsored 3 projects this year, and that I would caution against that. I caution them against that. but my contact there was an alumni, and he said, no, I can handle it, and he did great, three great projects, one packaging, one lean, what was the third? Shipping. And they'd be great, but usually, working with a senior design team is not necessarily an easy thing. The point of contact needs to be able to dedicate at least 3 or 4 hours a week. And, that a lot of us don't have 10% of our job to just give away to a senior design team. But the good plus is that at the end of the year, you'll have more work than if you've done, you'll have more product from a project standpoint than if you have done it yourself. So anyway, the logos turn over every year, but then we have a number of, there's probably about 70% that are repeat customers every year, but every now and then, some clients take the year off, like Sonic America usually has projects with us. It didn't work out last year, and that's fine. Happens every year. The good thing about that is it helps give our students some variety and something else to select from. Yes, sir.
Matt, what would you say is a typical project that brings value to the company, value to the team? What for a layman, what would that typically look like? What's a common high quality project?
Good question. So the question was, what is a typical project that would bring value for the team and value for the company? It's all over the map. So if you remember my first slide that talked about the ISE department, and we've got manufacturing, operations, research, human factors, and management science. So if you think about those 4 different subsets, in some colleges, those are each majors. In our case, they're sub areas of focus within the ISE majors. So if you just look at that, and you had one project in each one of those fields, there's 4 different projects that could look entirely different. But generally speaking, our biggest projects are process improvement, our most often requested projects, and that could be anything from a lean installation to a back office process improvement. So, beans and rice up here. I don't know if you guys are familiar with beans and rice, but they're in Pulaski, and it's a service provider for families who need that service, from food to financial education, things like that. And they sponsored 2 projects this year. Both of them were more data oriented, but they were process improvement. So one of the projects, Beans and Rice, has had a problem since they're an interactive organization with other similar organizations. They've got a problem in not a one-stop shop thing, but when families come in to register, there was a number of hurdles they had to get through to get registered. And then once that information was obtained by Beans and Rice, it was mainly paper. So we had a team create the system for registration. That's not atypical, but that's a good question. Commonalities amongst all of them. First of all, it has to be work for 4 people, or 3 or 4 people, and that equates to about 600 hours of team time, right? So that's one commonality. You can see I'm reaching for commonality. So they're generally regional. Like I said, we had 11 states, 3 in Southern California, 1 in England, 1 in Texas. But generally, our projects are regional. So for those of you in this room, that's a big plus. We expect that teams will provide, like I said, a quantifiable impact, and the company can expect significant impact. Anything from, I think this year when the students put the solar panels on the roof of the Learning Factory, over the life of the solar panels, they are going to save us money, but it's only like $300. So that was one of our lowest impacts. But at the same time, a company that worked for Republic Finance in Texas had about a $9 million impact, and that's real money, right? Do you hear me in there? Sooner or later, we'll talk real money. Isn't that what Joy Bush said years ago? But I'm trying to look up here at the logos and see. So I guess the answer to your question is there's no typical project. It can be just about anything, and it does not have to be manufacturing. Although that's my present preference. Yes. Great question. So the question was, do we have any areas where we'd like to explore more? Yes. So from our student standpoint, anything related to sustainability, anything related to medical, and that could be healthcare provision or healthcare manufacturing. Safety and human factors are also relatively rare, and I'm stating these because the number of projects that we have in these fields are usually lower than the lean projects in manufacturing. Anything related to finance, Virginia Tech rolled out a finance technology degree 2 years ago, minor, and a number of our ISCs find that as a good match. So they have the ISC major and the finance technology minor. So anything in banking, finance, loans, that's very cool. And keep in mind that it's industrial and systems engineering. So we have many of our students who are, they're the digiteheads. They love to do the systems work, right? And that was not me, but there are a lot of projects out there that can save companies money and have it be a relatively virtual project, data-oriented, backroom systems design, things like that. So anything related to systems, sustainability, like I said, a number of our students have green engineering minor, and those projects are big too. And I can take the form of anything from environmental or social conscious oriented projects. We had 2 projects this year in the Learning Factory and Roanoke Public Schools where it was a solar installation. To me, that's a real hardcore green engineering thing. But there's a softer side of green engineering where we're talking about carbon impacts for service companies. That's hard to capture, right? But Medallion, which is a service company, they're big on customer experience, and they wanted to know they're a nationwide company. They are all about measuring customer experience. So when you walk into any store and they give you that survey at the end, Medallion is the people in the back calculating all that stuff. And they are curious about their carbon impact of the data management that goes with you answering that survey in Nebraska, right? So it could be anything, but those are some. Good question. I appreciate that. We don't have anybody in healthcare here today. Because the Carillion Clinic, Duke, so the Duke, that logo right there is not Duke University, that's the Duke University Hospital System. We actually have an alumni who's their process improvement manager, and he said, I'm tired of having NC State Wolfpack students here, we gotta get some Hokies. So, so he, for the past 5 years, has had systems-oriented healthcare projects.
Possible map on site, everybody could be that we bring whatever team you have or in, and we say, look, this is what we're thinking, but does this qualify for that, or can we work something around that, or what do you even propose to before you would even start such a thing?
Okay, so the question was, as a company who might have some interest in a team, would it be appropriate to bring the team in ahead of time and help scope it? It's really not logical. The best thing to do is just let me come.
Well,
So, yeah.
I'm right over the hill, so you can come.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, that's really, so the summer before the year is usually when I make trips out to companies and I'll help you think through it.
Right.
Because the reality is the students don't really see any of the projects. They have no input on the projects until they show up. But if you've got, 5, 10 ideas, then we can just walk the floor and I can say, that's a good one, that's a bad one. That might be better if we added this, that kind of thing. And we can think through it together. Glad to do that. That's my job.
What's your calendar look like?
What's my calendar look like for tomorrow? What's tomorrow? Friday? Just send me an email. We'll connect. Yeah. How close are you today? How close are you to here? 3 months?
I'm too.
Let's be efficient here. Okay, you're 10 o'clock and you're 11:30. Okay, yeah. That's great. Glad to talk to you. Actually, I think tomorrow is open. But right now, since the students just graduated, although I'm not in Blacksburg, I'm working from the house now, but everything's quiet and my calendar is pretty open. I am taking the first week of June off, but send me an email and we'll set something up. I'm glad to come out. Yesterday, Tuesday, I was at James Harding, you know. Glad to come out. I always love a plant tour. That's the best part of my job.
That's what ISC too. We're not, as soon as I saw ISC.
Other questions? So there's my contact information. For those of you who may need to reach out to me, that's my cell phone number and my email. Ernest@dt.edu. Absolutely. So the question was, can we share your presentation? You've got it, right? So feel free to send it out. And I'm also glad to, if you know, instead of just you and I talking, if you want me to do some version of this for the manufacturing or the leadership team, I'm glad to do it. That a lot of times it helps to see, especially the slide where, you know, you look at the types of companies, how the actual year goes, that kind of thing. It gets folks in your plants or sites thinking about, oh yeah, you know, I always wanted to worry about this. I'm glad to do that. Usually a 10 or 15 minute chat like that is pretty productive. We've got plenty of time. The students don't come back until this year, August 23rd. You know, it makes it easier on us as the teaching team if we have the projects set in place by about August the 1st. But every year I say that, and every year the first day of class, I have 2 or 3 projects get dropped in, which is great because that gives the students more selection. And if you're comfortable, you as a client, if you're comfortable in being vague in the project, I kind of am too, because we have had projects come in and say, we've got 2 problems with this product. How can I get that to 1 project? Well, let's just state it like that. Let's state it that client says that there are 2 visible, let's say customer return problems, and they want the student team to address it. So that could be data gathering, they could look at customer feedback, they could look at your process and see which, you know, what they could do. So vague is okay too. I haven't been looking at a watch, so I'm just, we're getting plenty of time for apple fritters and muffins. The cost varies. There is a cost. We have 4 different partnership levels. The biggest is elite, and for $100,000, you get 12 teams. Ish. Going from memory, premium is $20,000 for 3 teams. Regular partner is $10,000 for 8 teams. That's usually the way people go. Understand everything is negotiable. For non-profits and for very small business, we have a $5,000 version, same team and everything. And usually we have 10% of our projects that are pro bono. The beans and rice projects were pro bono. So we can work something out. We also have access this year to some Go Virginia funds that have helped offset some of the cost. But like I said before, even, you know, if your company's pretty big enough to spend $100,000 and you can sponsor 12 teams, 12 times $200,000 in savings is a pretty big ROI. So it sells itself, but we do have, you know, program expenses we got to cover. There is a little bit of cost, but the ROI is great. Thanks for asking. And most of the stuff that I've talked about is on our website. The website's being rebuilt right now. So if you go to the Learning Factory, the video is all, you know, it's blurry and it's not real good, but the information about senior design is all there, including the client survey and those partnership levels. Like I'm at an auction. So, other questions? John, do you have closing remarks? I'm glad to stick around. I have a 1 o'clock meeting, but other than that, I plan on hitting out further. Thanks, everybody.
Thank everybody for joining us. For the folks on Zoom, we will be sharing contact information and the presentation. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to either our office or we'll get you in contact with Matt directly. But we appreciate everybody joining us and look forward to the next event. Thanks so much.